5 tunnels, $34 billion in combined cost overruns. The Channel Tunnel nearly bankrupted its investors. Boston's Big Dig ballooned from $2.8 billion to more than 15. Across every case, the final bill averaged roughly 2.5 times the original estimate, and the people who made those forecasts were never the ones left paying. The question isn't whether tunnels bankrupt their builders, it's what keeps producing the exact same outcome. Every tunnel begins as a blind bet against the earth. Before excavation starts, engineers map the subsurface using a sparse network of boreholes and seismic lines, point samples that represent only a fraction of the actual geology. This means the true ground conditions remain a mystery until the cut ahead is already in the dirt. Once a massive tunnel boring machine is launched, stopping is rarely an option. The astronomical cost of mobilizing crews, equipment, and supply chains creates a sunk cost trap where abandoning the project is far more expensive than digging forward, regardless of what obstacles emerge. To secure funding, promoters rely on optimistic forecasts that systematically understate final costs. They shift this unknowable geological risk onto contractors through fixed-price contracts. It is a procurement model designed to buy certainty where none exists, converting geological surprises directly into balance sheet liabilities. The Channel Tunnel opened in 1994, connecting England and France beneath the seabed as a fully private venture. It stands as the first institutional proof that a tunnel can successfully open and still trigger a severe financial breakdown. The original 1985 prospectus estimated construction costs at £4.8 billion. By completion, the final invoice reached £9.5 billion. That was an 80% budget overrun. Because the project relied entirely on private project finance without government underwriting, the concessionaire, Eurotunnel, carried this unsustainable debt directly on its balance sheet. The business model required 30 million passengers annually to service the loans, but actual ridership averaged only 22 million during the first 10 years. With revenues failing to match these high forecasts, Eurotunnel slipped into a decade-long cycle of near bankruptcy. A consortium of lenders led by Barclays, Goldman Sachs and Macquarie eventually had to intervene, orchestrating debt for equity swaps and restructuring agreements to absorb the financial damage. The physical connection succeeded, but the financial architecture lay in ruins. Rerouting the central artery of a working city underground shifted geological risk entirely to the public sector. In the early 1980s, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts estimated the Central Artery Tunnel Project, popularly known as the Big Dig, at $2.8 billion. By its official completion in December 2007, the construction bill had climbed to $14.8 billion. When the interest on the municipal bonds used to fund the build is factored in, the long-term liability surged past $24 billion. But the financial toll was only part of the legacy. The new tunnels suffered from persistent water leaks, and in July 2006, a concrete ceiling panel collapsed, killing a passing motorist. The disaster was not a wholesale structural failure. A federal investigation revealed the collapse was caused by the approval of cheap epoxy anchors that failed under a sustained load. The state, the lead contractor, Bechtel Parsons Brinckerhoff, and other firms eventually paid over $450 million in civil settlements. The public was left holding both the debt and the ongoing maintenance of a system built on compromised materials. Japan's Seikan Tunnel, a 54-kilometer undersea rail link between Honshu and Hokkaido, shows what happens when construction duration collides with a changing market. Full-scale boring began in 1971, with an estimated budget of 538 billion yen. The excavation dragged on for 17 years, repeatedly halted by massive geological setbacks, including a catastrophic 1976 flood in the Tsugaru Strait that drowned the machinery and paused progress for over 2 months. By the time the tunnel opened in 1988, the final bill had climbed to 1.1 trillion yen. But the true financial damage lay in the timeline. Over those 2 decades, cheap domestic air travel matured, capturing the passenger market the rail line was built to serve. Ridership peaked at just over 3 million in its first year, then steadily halved, leaving a massive public asset completed but economically obsolete. Germany's Stuttgart 21 project shifted the financial battlefield from geological faults to the ballot box. In 2010, Deutsche Bahn began excavating beneath the city of Stuttgart, aiming to convert its historic terminal station into an underground transit hub. The planning phase estimate stood at 2.6 billion euros. Almost immediately, the build collided with intense civic resistance. Public outcry over cost escalation and urban heritage destruction led to years of protests and a landmark statewide referendum in 2011. Though 58.8% of voters chose to let construction proceed, the political resolution did nothing to stop the economic spiral. Complex underground station geometry, groundwater management issues, and cost-sharing litigation between regional authorities and the national rail provider bloated the bill past 11 billion euros, eventually climbing to 14.5 billion. The original 2019 opening date slipped repeatedly, pushing full commissioning back toward 2027 and beyond, proving that political friction can run up an invoice just as effectively as the hardest rock. In December 2013, the world's largest tunnel boring machine, Bertha, broke down under Seattle. Just 1,600 feet into the drive, a main bearing seal failed, grinding the cutter head to a halt. Because the machine was trapped 80 feet beneath the city streets, engineers had to sink a 31-meter diameter rescue shaft from Westlake Avenue just to access and repair the gears. This rescue operation halted progress for more than 2 years, adding $223 million in overruns to the baseline budget. When the mechanical repairs ended, the financial litigation began. The contractor, Seattle Tunnel Partners, sued the state of Washington for $50 million in extra costs. The state counterclaimed for $30 million, alleging contract breach. This claims battle continued until a confidential settlement in 2020. The tunnel eventually opened in early 2019, but the physical delay had already driven the total cost beyond $4.5 billion. The Gotthard Base Tunnel runs 57 kilometers beneath the Swiss Alps, forming the longest low-level rail connection on Earth. Opened in 2016, the project was delivered within 5% of its 12.2 billion francs budget and schedule. Switzerland achieved this rare stability by changing the procurement process entirely. National referendums in 1992 and 1998 secured upfront public funding through heavy vehicle and fuel taxes, removing the pressure to use optimistic passenger forecasts to attract private investors. Geologists spent a decade drilling over 1,500 boreholes to map the alpine crust before civil construction started. The Swiss Federal Railways then split the boring into phased fixed-price contract packages with guaranteed maximum prices, keeping execution risk with the builders. This model is almost never copied. It requires an unusual level of political patience and strict institutional discipline that politically pressured fast-track projects elsewhere rarely tolerate. The numbers reveal a structural pattern rather than a series of isolated errors. Across the 5 overrunning megaprojects, the cumulative budget overshoot reaches roughly $34 billion, averaging a multiplier of 2.5 times the original estimate. This discrepancy persists because of a basic institutional mismatch. The parties who generate the optimistic forecast do not pay the final invoice. Today, this same dynamic is visible in projects currently under construction, From the Brenner Base Tunnel and HS2 deep level sections, to the Mumbai Coastal Tunnel, the Istanbul Eurasia expansion, and the Lao-China railway line. Today, as cities push deeper underground, the economic arithmetic remains undefeated. Governments still sign fixed-price contracts for UN-mapped geology, underwriting optimism they cannot afford. Until we price uncertainty honestly, the final invoice will always swallow the estimate. Share your thoughts below.